This podcast is a proud member of the Paranormality Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Xander and Stone Science and Supernatural podcast. Today's episode is a special one, a Stone exclusive interview with Shiro Nobunaga. Shiro provides real solutions through his empathic intuitive gifts of extrasensory perception and psychic abilities, and he taps into your energy to see what is at the core of your needs, which guide him to the answers and solutions to your questions.
Today, we have with us Shiro Nobunaga. How are you today, Shiro?
Hi, how are you? Good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I met Shiro a couple of years ago during a reading that was recommended highly by someone else. And I noted on Yelp, you have 49, which is super impressive. 5-star reviews, no bad reviews. In fact, in all the times I've done marketing, I've never seen anyone that has perfect reviews. And since I don't have the permission to read everyone else's review, I will read the one that I left you.
Oh,
11/14/2018. I said, Shiro is phenomenal and has so much light and love in his soul that he actually radiates. I was so moved by his intuitive counseling session with me that the experience has actually altered my entire week and made me rethink my direction I want to move in for the future. So many things he said resonated with me, but he also gave me so much food for thought about my past and present. Admittedly, some things were difficult to own, but it would be more difficult to move forward with these obstructive boulders sitting in an otherwise clear path. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to do some heavy lifting now and clear the path for an unparalleled 2019. Shiro's openness and honesty about our similar childhoods also helped me feel more open. There was immediately a connection and a sense of trust and unity. His ability to relate to clients and listen to spiritual guidance while being so thoughtful and sensitive about his own engagement is beyond impressive. Additionally, Shiro's sense of humor was a refreshing aspect to our time together, especially given the otherwise serious nature of our discussions. And it goes on. I don't think I've ever written such a long review in my whole life, but I noted on the site, many of them sounded very similar. So why don't you tell us what it is that you do and what spectacular services you offer that inspires people without being asked to write these amazing Yelp reviews?
Yeah. First of all, I'm very grateful and thank you for your very eloquent and beautiful review as well. I guess I would, what's available to the public right now, the category I would fall under would be psychic medium. I regard myself as a spiritual counselor, spiritual teacher, and really, my intent and my purpose is to help everyone empower themselves and to connect with their own intuitive guidance and to know that we are all very capable being sentient to navigate our own path. And so most of the time, even I'm very blessed with clientele as well, and that they come with their own sense of intuitive sense about their questions. And they really use me as sort of the validation point, and that's really the best way to utilize this kind of service, is not to become codependent or, be at the mercy of what they're saying or what we're saying, but to really see, hey, I feel this way, but, give me your insight and let me make an informed decision, or I'll apply that with my own critical thinking and my own intuitive sense about it. That's really it. But yeah, in a nutshell, empathic counselor, spiritual counselor, however you want to say it. I do mediumship. Basically all the clairvoyance and claircognizance, clairaudience, whatever that can be activated at each session will be activated to serve the highest good of the client.
And how did you get into this type of industry?
That's a long story, as you know, right? I started out, my entry or my first initial awakening was definitely Christianity, back in teenage years. It led me, one thing led to another. Of course, I was into drugs and rock and roll. Unfortunately, I wasn't into the sex part of the sex, drugs, and rock and roll. But I was, 2/3 there. And
right.
In the lifestyle, I was struggling. I was in high school. and a friend led me to, and became a Christian. But really, long story short, I always found myself in a position to counsel, to listen, to really have sound advice or whatever. And I never really bothered to even give acknowledgement. And of course, when you're in the church, you kind of say, hey, the Holy Spirit led me to say this to you, or I feel like the Spirit is putting it on my heart to tell you this or whatever. And so really, for a long time, even though my first aspiration is music and still is, and I still love music and play music, but I've always dreamed of like being able to help people, counsel and advice and guidance and so forth. And I just wasn't really interested in the psychology field. I just couldn't really get myself to put myself through being educated and indoctrinated with other people's research. I just felt like I wanted to own. And not that I didn't study it. I did definitely look into, I just didn't really want to go through the route of getting a degree and all the conventional. So I was like, I wish I could do this for a living, but not having to go through the conventional path. I've forgotten about that desire for a long time. I stayed on the music. And one day I had a very profound turning point, a crossroad in my life. And I had a friend that came into my life who now is my wife. And I never meditated and never thought about, anything regards to spirituality. I was more preoccupied with sort of still figuring things out, shedding a lot of the religious background, which I just felt like didn't connect the dots for me. And when I was meditating with her, I was getting this weird sense of message coming through, like a Star Wars, the prelude where you see the story kind of. I literally saw the scrolling of the message saying, tell her I love her through you. And I kept getting it. So I was like, I don't know what this means. And she goes, I wonder if it's my father, that he's passed away. And so we went to a psychic and said, what does that mean? And he goes, oh yeah, just have Shiro mediate for your dad. And I'm like, oh, I can do that, But it took a lot for me to really shed the dogma and the sort of the indoctrination that I had, because that really had a lot of confusion in place. So yeah, when I just went with it, I was like, oh, okay, at that point, I was just saying yes to everything. And I think that when I started experimenting, I had another friend, and there was this, circle of where I just started to experiment. And that's when I started to kind of, oh, wow, like I have this. And so I started doing free email readings on Craigslist just to try it out. And started getting, oh my God, it was so right on. Oh my God, how did you know? And I was like, okay, I guess this is working, And I just for the, fun of it, I think I'm ready to maybe put a Yelp ad or something, again, nothing, just trying things out really. But I just felt really happy to be able to do that, So when I started doing that on Yelp, I started getting clients and clients and clients and clients. And I just went on and just kept doing it. And that's where it kind of started. But I realized that it's always been an inherent part of me, a gift.
So most of your training originally came from Craigslist. That's unusual.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I had a psychic friend who kind of mentored me. He was a young but old soul. He was in his early 20s. My first ever psychic experience, he was the one that mediated for my dead father, and just, profound message coming from him, something that I would never hear from him if he was alive with me. And really that, and even that really, I was comfortable enough because he was former Catholic, and, he understood where I was from. So it just really took a lot of that, but he just started encouraging me like, hey, it's nothing special. Just focus on, and you got to believe in yourself. And he really helped me to kind of connect with that, definitely. So he wasn't like a big mentorship or anything like that. He just was a great encouragement for that. That set me on my path.
I think that was, it's interesting you say that, because I think that was part of why I was so at ease with you, is because when we started talking about our own religious backgrounds, we had such similarities. And there is something about finding that connection point that puts everyone at ease. And so I think that when you're willing to share those parts of yourself, other people start opening up.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is something people seem to misunderstand about you or the services you offer that you wish you could clear up for once and for all?
Well, there's a lot of misconceptions about psychic abilities and readers and what that means for everyone. So first of all, I definitely get not a lot, but I do sometimes encounter, and I'm aware generally that people kind of think, well, you're psychic, you should know, or you should know everything kind of thing.
Right. Why haven't you won the lottery?
Yeah, exactly. It's
right.
The same kind of thing where it's like, oh, if there's God, why do people die kind of thing. It's just, you're missing a lot of things here. So yeah, that's definitely a misconception. And the most powerful misconception here is that we're not doing anything differently. We all have intuition. We're all complete as a sixth sense being. We're just taught to only use the five senses. That doesn't mean we don't have it. Detectives have gut feelings. Mothers have instincts, women's instinct or whatever. Creatives and musicians, inspirations. That's an intuitive process. And we just use, anybody who is a good advisor, good counselor, good listener, they can apply their intuitive abilities to reach more far expansive realms within that particular ability, just like musicians can reach deep into the downloads of inspirations and creators and writers and so forth. What makes a photographer take a great shot at that moment? It's an intuitive process. It's not a logical process. And so I think the biggest misconception is that, the client doesn't have it, the reader has the gift, and they're at the mercy of the readers to get something. That's not really, certainly not the direction that we're going. The direction for all intuitives moving forward is that, like I said earlier, we help to validate what you guys are picking up, what you're feeling, what you're seeking, helping to connect the dots. It's not about us being anything special. We're not a messenger from God. I mean, we are, in a sense, a vessel for a greater good, so to speak. We are serving a purpose here, sure, but no less than musicians are or writers are. There's been great movies and TV series and, photography and music that help to elevate the consciousness to an expansive ascension. And I think that we're playing the same role. We definitely are more in the business of helping to heal, helping to make sense of our past, our present and future and so forth. But, in that sense, again, only the only misconception here is that we're anything different than you guys are.
So it's not about mind reading, it's more about connecting the dots then.
Yeah. I mean, I think within our sixth sense, there's so many, telepathic connection, telekinesis, moving material objects without touching, or reading minds, which is telepathy. You got claircognizance, a knowing, clairaudience, a hearing of something beyond, clairvoyance, which is visual. All these senses that you have, we don't acknowledge and to the extent, like anything else, to the extent that we put our awareness and attention and focus on it, it will grow and it becomes more clear to you.
I remember one of the profound things that Pam was one of my friends who had passed away at an unfortunately young age, had said to listen. And so that stayed with me for the last 2 years. Like, just shut up for a second and listen. If you could just listen just for a minute, maybe you'll have a better experience.
It's true. It's very true. I think Jimi Hendrix said it best, knowledge speaks, but wisdom listens. And I think that, to be wise, you need to first be a listener.
That is beautiful.
And not only the listener of people, but listener of your own inner guidance.
That's perfect. I think that's the show. And we're out.
And on that note, thank you.
No, I'm kidding. I have 50 more questions. So we just released a podcast on reincarnation last week. What are your thoughts on that topic? I know some of them, but I want you to share them.
I never really believed in it when I was a Christian, and of course, we were taught not to really, essentially. But when Tesla said, Nikola Tesla said, you'll understand the mysteries of the universe when you see everything from energy, frequency, and vibration. It really is, what we call soul, what we call spirit, is just a terminology we apply to what it is, which is also just energy, frequency, consciousness. When you think about it from an energy standpoint, it makes sense that there's no limit. There's no finite sense to it. The finite sense that we have is only limited to our physical reality. So as an energy, why would you only bestow yourself only one life experience? Of course, you never go away, because when you're done with your physical experience, you're back to the celestial space, with the source, with oneness. So why wouldn't you desire to have another? And it only makes sense because it always constantly expands and adds to the infinite universe that it is, because the universe being infinite only can be constituted as infinite if it's constantly expanding. And that's what contributes to the expansion is life experience, emotions, thoughts, dreams, visions, pain, joy. All of that is what creates worlds and what creates universes and multiverses and so forth.
It reminds me, there was a movie when I was a child called The Never-Ending Story. Did you ever see that? It's sort of the same concept. The more you imagine and believe, the bigger the universe gets. So do you believe we reincarnate only as humans, or also as animals, or even dung beetles?
Yeah, and that's a very good question. And I think that that's something that even I asked when I started to learn about reincarnation. When we understand ourselves as energy, when we understand ourselves as consciousness, what we call soul or spirit is just a different terminology we're applying. Like Tesla said, we are, the mysteries of the universe can be understood if we see everything from vibrational frequency and with energy, to understand it that way. When you think of energy, it never goes away. Energy is always there. And when we are consciousness, when we incarnate, we can only conceive ourselves as any one individual because we have an intent for it. We have a reason for it. There's a divine purpose, intent, and design to every incarnation. When you think about that, then it's hard to imagine us going backwards. I think it would be more natural to understand that we've evolved from something like an insect or an animal consciousness to that. That may be more conceivable. But again, because there is an intent and purpose, if we go into a two-dimensional living creature, which is what animals and insects are, really, they're living only on instincts. They don't have consciousness. So in that sense, it would have to be with a purpose. Now, it's possible that a soul can choose to be incarnate as a animal so that it can be a silent support for someone that they love, they want to be with, and knowing that in that divine design, they become more of a powerful support to someone by being a dog to that person, because that person struggles with trust with humans or whatever. And so this soul chooses to incarnate as a dog in that particular incarnation to serve that purpose. That's possible, but again, it has to be with a very clear intent and purpose of a greater good. The bottom line is what I understand with reincarnation and what would be the nature overall of life is that it evolves. It's expansive. It moves forward. It learns from the past. When you think about that, because when I see like souls inside of an autistic or Down syndrome body, a pre-existing condition, again, people may look at that as a handicap, but I often see a great soul inside. I often see an old soul that chooses to volunteer to jump into a body with a pre-existing condition so that they can be a garner light post of compassion, to garner support, to stimulate those around them, to awaken themselves to needs and compassion, empathy, and so forth. And so I see great soul. I don't see that they deserve any sympathy. They're not lacking. They're serving a purpose. And so, yeah, it's possible. Anything is possible. But would we go back to being an insect? Can we really serve a purpose, having knowledge of what it's like to be human already? So I think that's where the question is. It's not the question of possibility, but would a soul intend to do it, and what kind of intent would be behind being a very minute or not as serving a great purpose by becoming an insect in the wild? I mean, they could choose to.
Mosquito.
Yeah, exactly.
No real intent in becoming a mosquito unless you sort of have vampire tendencies.
Yeah,
anyway,
exactly.
What do you think about regression? Have you ever been regressed?
Yeah, I've had 2 sessions like that. Quantum healing. Dolores Cannon is a great author. She was a hypnotherapist and have made some profound discoveries. And later she's got a legacy of helping to train people to do that. And I was part of that training for certain people that was training for that method. And I've experienced it. And certainly that is a very viable method of healing too.
How so? How so?
I think when you understand what your past was, to the extent that it helps you to bring clarity as to who you are today, why you're struggling with certain things, why you have certain tendencies, why you have certain inclinations, to have that understanding, it just helps. The bottom line is that most of our fears, most of our worries, most of our struggles come from the element of unknown. And the more we have an understanding of how we came to be who we are and how we choose to be who we are, then the more we own our path, our present, and of course, subsequently our future.
That is lovely. Well said. Do you feel like to me it is, but what's your opinion? Do you feel like reincarnation is a controversial or taboo topic, and if so, why?
Only to the extent of any dogma or doctrine that shuns it or argues with it. I think it's not taboo. It certainly is more casually mentioned these days. I was a pastor in another life. I must have been this thing in another life. I think the idea that this is the only one becomes more and more unnatural. So to the extent that you're holding on to a belief that counters that, absolutely it becomes taboo, because anything that challenges your belief will become taboo. If you're afraid of letting your beliefs go, or if you're afraid of having that beliefs being threatened, but no, to the extent that you think from more of even just from a critical thinking point of view, to believe that this is the only one. Yeah, that's more unnatural than to believe that this is definitely not my first rodeo.
Right. Agreed. And are you familiar with the term soul pod? Do you think we can come back with other souls?
No, not necessarily, but I think that is probably, kind of similar to soulmate. Except that, a lot of people have soulmate terminology misunderstood as something intimate and only partnership kind of thing. Soulmate to me is a community of souls. And I think that's what SoulPod is pointing to. I'm not really familiar with the term, so I can't say that I come from studied knowledge, but I can say that it probably points to a community of souls, which is what soulmates are. And those souls that choose to incarnate in the same way, or to connect with each other. Sometimes your soulmate can be one-time nemesis that appears once in your life to just propel you to a profound path and disappear again. And that's still a very profound soulmate connection.
It's interesting.
I think that's what
to
you're
think.
saying.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting to think of your nemesis as being part of a soulmate community, because, well, that's difficult to wrap your brain around, because you want to put them as one of the bad guys. But when you look at it, like you're saying, as it's helping you grow and expand, then that becomes a different thing. So.
Good cop, bad cop.
Exactly. So you think it's a choice, though, to come back in the same little
Absolutely.
group? Okay. So it's just like, I wanted to see my good friend. So let's let's pop back in. Or is it possible that maybe you wronged somebody in the last time and it wasn't necessarily in the right, for growth or expansion? Could you come back to?
Well, within the soulmate connection, you definitely have a lot of different agendas, what we call karmic agenda, what we call karmic debt, soul contract. Yeah, we definitely have certain connections where we say, yeah, we're not done yet. We need another lifetime to resolve this. Sure, absolutely. The bottom line is you can see a lot of examples within our physical lifetime experience to understand what previous life and reincarnation really is. We have friends in this lifetime, and we have things that are unresolved with that friend. That friend remains in our thought. It remains as lack of closure. It remains as an issue that our inner navigational system says, hey, you know what? You need to still resolve this. You need to, get this out of the way. You need to talk to that person. You need to forgive. All of that, your inner sense will tell you that. And if that's something that you don't get done in this lifetime, it's going to remain with you, and it's going to be the next agenda for your next lifetime, and so forth. So whatever you see in this lifetime, experience in this lifetime, the nature of what it's like to want to try things that you've done wrong, or to want to get better at something, the nature of wanting to evolve or get better or to expand, that continues on. Absolutely. You never have enough lifetimes to accomplish all the things that's constantly expanding within your field of consciousness.
So in our last episode, we talked about the regression I had, and actually prior to the regression, he had said that he saw me as a prostitute in Greece. And then during the regression, I was a very happy prostitute, though, so that's good news.
That's all that matters.
That right? But my first life in the actual regression was really tragic, more so than the prostitution, by the way. It was really tragic. And, I don't know that the whole thing was tragic, but the end that I saw was very tragic. And then the second one was just a glimpse, but it was a very happy, a little happy life. But then the third life, I was a big blue sphere in space, and a larger sphere was communicating with me, but not in words. And he was really stunned by that because he had never had that experience. So do you have any idea what that was about, to be a big blue orb in space, communicating with a bigger orb and just having this sense of peace?
Well, consciousness exists in different forms, and we understand the term like starseed, where souls that have lived lifetimes of evolution in another civilization, more advanced and more evolved than Earth. We only see human form, and so we think that's normal. But for other beings, not having form is the norm. I've often heard of extraterrestrial race that are blue-skinned. Orbs are definitely evidences of life forms in different shapes that appear in naked eye in this particular reality as an orb. But within that orb, for that orb, that could be a whole world, a whole universe within that orb. It doesn't, like I said before, it's like we could have been an insect. We could have been part of the elements of the world. The bottom line is that, yeah, of course, that would be possible. You could have been, he could have been tapping into a very early stage of your evolution, or a much more far advanced form of evolution in another life where civilization, because there are civilizations, I believe, where they don't even use words to communicate anymore. It's just all telepathic, vibrational connection. With that comes different evolved body parts and so forth. So even form, whether it's in an orb kind of thing, it is in the end the energy of consciousness that matters, and whatever experience that consciousness wants to have. And being an orb doesn't necessarily say they can't have a profound experience, because even as a consciousness, you have all the experience you can have. Just like we can imagine ourselves to have an experience without physically moving. So in that sense, yeah, absolutely, you could have had that life. Blue sounds, like an extraterrestrial race, that in and of itself kind of signifies that. But yeah, I mean, there's no need to argue that.
Are blue light beings and starseeds the same thing?
Yes, absolutely. Meaning that starseeds suggest extraterrestrial. So extraterrestrial doesn't just simply talk about space, universe. It also talks about other dimensions, other timelines, other multiverse and parallel universe, so forth. So I think, when you think about potential life for being existent in different civilization and in different physical forms, yeah, absolutely. They can be construed as one, or it becomes part of that topic.
And you actually, during the reading, you had suggested that I'm most likely Pleiadian. Mm-hmm. And since that time, in the last 2 years, the same thing has been brought up a couple more times. What exactly does that mean?
Pleiadian is one of the planetary civilization that is recognized as a benevolent, advanced. Some people even definitely have confirmed that Jesus Christ was Pleiadian. There are other benevolent planetary civilizations like Arcturians and Orions and Sirians. And of course, there are malevolent civilizations like reptilians, draconians, and greys and so forth. Just like human race, there's all kinds of different cultures. Pleiadian definitely often are known to manifest themselves if they choose to manifest as human form, or souls choosing to incarnate in Earth human form, oftentimes choose to be beautiful in appearance, also very creative, and again, also just inherent benevolence, sense of wanting to promote peace, wanting to promote elevated or higher consciousness, wanting to embrace new technology, advancement, and so forth. Oftentimes, Pleiadians are one of the leading civilizations for that movement, and that are definitely contributing to Earth evolution as well.
Well, I'm really glad you didn't say I was a gray, because that would be super disappointing right now.
I think that even within the malevolent races, there are people that are like, hey, I don't want to be like that, So again, even within those types of dominant cultures, there are definitely unique individualities to every race. So you can't just say they're all bad or they're all good. There's no such thing. It's just the overall general inclinations of their being.
Basically like the culture of that. Okay. And how many alien races are we aware of that could be reincarnating? I mean, do you have any idea?
That is, very unquantifiable, really. But yeah, I mean, I've sort of named some of the most popular ones. But I think, again, they come in different forms, right? I mean, they definitely are still in their original form as Pleiadian, Arcturian races that are trying to interact with human race in one way or another through channeling or through sometimes appearing in our dimensional space by means of, UFO sightings or any kind of intervention like nuclear devices suddenly malfunctioning or whatever. And to the extent of also injecting their souls into a human form, and also hybrids, meaning dominantly Pleiadian or any kind of extraterrestrial gene combined with a human gene to literally create a humanoid hybrid that they exist in to literally serve a purpose that way. So there's so many different ways that they interact and can come in. But yes, that absolutely happens.
When you say injecting their souls into a human form, how does that work?
Well, it's kind of like any kind of reincarnation process. You go, okay, I've left my body and here I am in the spiritual ether, and Earth humanity right now needs more souls that are far more evolved than the average. And I feel like I have something to contribute. I'll volunteer myself to go into becoming a human, to have that, not only I'm sure they also have that curiosity. What would it be like to be Earthian? Because it's so different, so
rough, difficult,
and primitive, very primitive.
Right.
Yeah, from what I understand, the benevolent extraterrestrial community looks upon the Earthians with great respect. How hard it is for a soul to survive and to evolve through such ruthless and very primitive culture. But yeah, and so a lot of starseeds come in and they get shocked, and they're like, some of them, like, I know I volunteered, but I don't want to be here anymore.
Let me just go ahead and check out. So not when you said injecting souls into humans, I didn't know if you were referring to more like possessions, like somebody's an adult.
I wouldn't doubt that they may actually have something like Avatar, where they go into a pod and they literally can use the technological support to inject themselves into a body. And because I've heard of walk-ins, so there's an official term, just as Starseed is an official term. There is a term called walk-ins, where they literally can interchange or exchange souls with another. By if a soul says, I'm going to give up, I'm ready to die, and they may not have physically died or physically committed suicide, but the soul inside have switched. So sometimes that can happen because that vessel or that avatar is very useful to serve a purpose, and that soul within is leaving prematurely or decides to leave that body. And instead of having that body die with that soul leaving, another soul takes place. It's a walk-in, that happens too. So again, it could happen different ways. It doesn't always have to go through the conventional reincarnation process.
So it's more of an agreement and less of a possession then. It's not a hostile takeover.
Nothing can truly happen without the permission. No. I mean, even victims and perpetrators in a way have an agreement, right? You can't have any kind of relationship, even if it's a damaging relationship, without some kind of permission, some kind of purpose, some kind of an agreement. It just doesn't happen like that. It's not random like that. And things don't get violated, suddenly or spontaneously. There is a purpose. When we become a victim to any kind of situation or experience, even that is a lesson that we choose to learn from, we choose to overcome, we choose to experience, to resurface something that was lying dormant within us. So nothing can happen without any reason or intent behind it and an agreement. So if someone has a possession, it's because there's a purpose, permission, some kind of surrendering. They're in a state of powerlessness. They're inviting that kind of takeover. Even if it looks like a takeover, it's still an agreement, some kind of purpose.
So most things are then, in your opinion, are for growth and expansion, whether it's of the figure or the person themselves.
Well, I think the underlying principle to all of this is that all things come in equal polarity. So when you see a victim, you also see a lesson, or you also see some kind of healing. You also see, there's always a blessing to a tragedy. Always. In other words, positive cannot be positive without negative. Without someone said, Stevie Wonder doesn't know what darkness is because he's never seen the light. So how would he know what darkness is without knowing what the light is? Right. And that's true. You can't have one polarity without the other. So that applies to all things. So when you see someone becoming a victim to something, you immediately see blessing, healing on the other side of that experience as well. This is why you can't just condemn one side or the other.
So it's about balance and harmony.
Absolutely.
When I had my reading with you, I remember being very adamant that I was moving to LA the following year, and this is what I was going to do, and I was going to be working in screenwriting. And then when you started talking to me, you said that that's potentially, that there's strong potential for that in the future. I don't feel like it's happening right now. Mm-hmm. And you said, I see you going back into teaching. Mm-hmm. And that I resisted that because I thought that, no, I'm not going back into teaching. And you said I'd be traveling overseas. Mm-hmm. And so I sent you a couple of emails like, I don't feel like those parts resonated. And then a few months later, I was on my way to China teaching. I'm teaching again this year, and I am not in LA. So how do you handle people like myself who push back? Like, is it tempting to say, I told you so when you see it all coming to fruition?
No, I mean, I totally relate, especially when you're hearing messages that you didn't expect. It's not easy to accept it and to, and that's the powerful thing is that you do have the choice to reject it. You do have the choice to alter courses. It's very important for everyone to remember that future outcome has generally two categories of futures. One, a checkpoint, a fated, scripted outcome that you cannot bypass no matter which alternate path you choose. You cannot avoid this certain path. Jesus Christ's crucifixion, JFK's assassination, Martin Luther King's assassination. There are certain turning points that you cannot bypass because you scripted it prior to your incarnation, that these are certain things that has to happen for me. And that's okay that you do that. But the fun of it is that you also keep a lot of the organic. So you got that fluctuating, changeable futures with every choice you have. You have multiple choices and multiple outcomes that all exist in its full outcome. And then you have certain outcomes that you cannot avoid. I think a great intuitive will help to identify, like, you know what, I see that for you, but I see that you have the choice to change it. I see the probability of you being able to access this path. And I also see that this is absolutely inevitable. This is something you're going to have to go through. Sometimes, though, like in your case, it was important that you didn't know that it was inevitable. In other words, that's an organic process that it's really the intuitive reader is accountable for them to know, okay, this is something that's going to happen no matter what, but this person needs to believe and have the ability to reject it, to struggle with it, to try to counter it. And
I did.
Yeah. This is why the nature of the universe is to always uphold free will. So you always have to feel and know and believe that you are in control. That's why I said it's very important that you're not just codependent. And I admire that someone is willing to challenge a reader's projection of what they're seeing. That's very important. So I welcome it. I never have the sense of I told you so, unless they're like totally mocking it or disrespecting it or something. But I think, that it was important that you actually wanted to reject it.
It's interesting how you, what you're saying as far as those pit stops, because I remember when I was a child and certain things, of course, didn't resonate for me either. And, in my own religious and the dogma and all those things. But one of the things, even early on, I had said was that I felt like there were these pit stops and that there were three different ways. And there was going to be the good way, the easy way, and then probably my way, which has pretty much been, make it as difficult as you possibly can to get the little nugget out of it. Yeah. So nugget of wisdom. But that was really early on. I had that sense, and really early on in this lifetime. Maybe I'd already figured it out the previous lifetime. Mm-hmm. So why do you think people come to you for counseling? What does your service provide that you think that they're getting from you, especially from reading, 49 Yelp reviews? What are they getting from you that maybe they can't get somewhere else?
I think clarity is the first and foremost. I think, the bottom line is people walk away having sense of clarity. It's not about having everything solved, but having a sense of that there is clarity about the questions they're asking, or that they were very blurry about certain intent. There are a lot of people that are, right now, like the pandemic is causing a lot of people to lose jobs, and they're like, well, I've always had visions for entrepreneurial business, and, is this the right way to go? Things like that. And for me to go, absolutely, you are now ripe to go onto an entrepreneurial path. And they go, great. Now, it doesn't mean that they're suddenly going to have a successful business launched. It's just to have that clarity that, it's okay. Sometimes just knowing that it's okay for me to have that vision or dream, to have that desire, that it's not being judged, that there's no naysayers, or that there's additional wisdom that accompanies that thought. Those are the things that I definitely, play an important role for, I think. I'm definitely seeing the most highest good probable outcome, but I also definitely present other potential outcomes that that person is facing depending on their choices. But I think that for them to know that they have that choice, they have that clarity that if they go into this direction, they will have this. If they go into another direction, they'll have this. That's the kind of thing I think people are looking for with my sessions.
I agree. And that is what I received. It took me a little longer than some people, but always the hard way. Well, today we are doing a show later on this evening on shadow people. Do you have any experience with that phenomenon?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically falls under the category of what's regarded as paranormal, right? Really, in the bottom line is, remember, our five senses especially our eyes, but our five senses are tuned to capture physical reality, what we can experience in this physical three-dimensional reality. So our eyes are not tuned to see energy. That would really not help the situation. If we saw auras and energies moving around constantly, or if we started to see other dimensions with our naked eye, it would be very difficult to function in the three-dimensional reality. And so our human body is like a goggle to a scuba diving. And so we aren't tuned to see that. Now, sometimes an energy can have such strong purpose, strong will, strong desire, strong enough to project themselves into the physical reality where a naked eye can capture something. And that's what's regarded as paranormal or a ghost or whatever. But again, is it really paranormal, or is that part of the norm that we just certainly haven't learned to accept? Our definition of norm has evolved, whether we acknowledge it or not. And eventually, acknowledging the coexistence of the physical and the non-physical will become more normal as more people will be able to communicate with past loved ones in different formats like dreams or intuition or meditation, whatever. It will become more and more normal. Then these shadow people won't be regarded as a shadow. They'll become another race for us to accept.
Oh, interesting. That is very interesting. Well, we're going to have to change the category of our podcast to very normal instead of paranormal. Now that I know, it's going to bug me that we're called paranormal. Like, well, just kidding. It's very normal. Yeah. So I know that counseling, even in teaching, of course, I've had many students come to me for counseling as well, and as friends and family, and it can be draining sometimes. And I know that you're supposed to protect your energy, and I know that we're also not always good with that. So where do you go to find your own sense of balance and peace after let's say you've had 5 sessions in one row? Do you feel very drained?
Yeah. And sometimes it's invigorating too. It depends on the connection that you share. If the client is fighting you, if the client is stubborn and blocking and it's hard to get that connection established, then the synergy doesn't subsequently happen. Then it becomes more draining. Overall, I think if I have five good sessions, I come away with a buzz, a sense of like just not really feeling like my feet are on the ground, so to speak. So I ground myself. I connect to nature. Also connecting with nature helps to expel energies that I've taken on. That's very important for any empathic people. Empath overall senses and absorbs people's energy, and sometimes to own it for themselves. It's hard sometimes to not make the distinction between my energy and someone else's energy or emotion that I'm feeling. And so by grounding, by having Mother Earth take some of that energy away from you, giving back recycled energy back to you. But if you walk barefooted on grass or hugging a tree, touching plants, or just even connecting by walking in nature, that allows you to really reconnect with recycled, beautiful, revitalized energy, and allowing some of this energy that's not yours to be out of your system. So that type of maintenance becomes more important. I wasn't really mindful of that in the early beginning stages, and I was warned about it, and then I started to feel the fatigue and accumulation, and I was like, okay, It's kind of like a computer system that needs to be sort of defragmented or system cleanup kind of thing. It's the same thing.
Interesting. So nature is the solution. And it's interesting too, because the trees, of course, you have the carbon monoxide and the oxygen exchange.
Yeah.
So going back to science, we it's the same sort of process.
Absolutely.
Do you feel, we're going to go more globally now, do you feel anything positive came out of the 2020 in a bigger sense?
Absolutely. I mean, again, everything is of your interpretation. All things come in equal polarity. But the way I see it, 2020 being the first year of a new decade, every first year of a new decade has a way of setting a trajectory for the rest of the decade. 2020 just happens to be the most powerful trajectory setting year. So it requires more powerful catalyst of change, in which way I think the pandemic and the Black Lives Matter movement and the political election and all of this taking place in 1 year was essential. I think any reconstruction precedes deconstruction. Any rebirth is preceded by an ending, right? Any new beginnings are always preceded by an ending. So whenever you see some kind of a deconstruction, you see that it's anticipating a new birth or reconstruction. That's what I see for this year, is that all of this is challenging what was. And it's telling people, hey, everything used to work for you, but moving forward, you might want to revamp your belief system, your value system. What you thought was the way it is, it's not the way it is. And so make a conscious decision to change your trajectory for yourself. And it's just happening on a massive level, but it's the same on an individual level. Even when I do individual readings, I get the same readings. That individually speaking as well, that they're at a major turning point, a change, letting go of the old, clean up your house, your spiritual house, really, challenge and question your existing belief systems and value systems. Is it really working for you? Is it really helping to support where you're going from here? A lot of people's consciousness is changing, and with that, they're no longer embracing or submitting themselves to a belief system that was set up before. And that's a great opportunity. So yes, absolutely, I see it as a great positive opportunity.
And so as far as 2021, do you have any predictions? Wait, 2021, I guess since we're talking about themes for the decade, what do you think is coming for us?
I think there's going to be much more clear divide between the positive and the negative. This pandemic has been a great vehicle that eliminates the middle ground. It eliminates the gray area. It's propelling the consciousness to a more extreme positive or extreme negative. And with that, you'll see a very divided reality of both, one being a very high conscious, expansive, and evolved state, and with that creating of society and community henceforth, and the other being very fear-based and very more defensive and more just negative overall, just believing of the worst that can come about.
So you see a division then?
Absolutely.
Okay, so it is Star Wars. We're about to live Star Wars.
Well, and isn't that what we need? Is more of a clear sense of choice between two polarities? Ambiguity is no longer viable.
When I was little, I remember my dad, we took soda pop lids and nailed them onto a board, and he showed me that it was gears. He showed me that if you move one, they all move. And so I've always appreciated that about contrast, that if that the opposing directions actually help make the movement. So while you're at it, are there any predictions for the Xander and Stone podcast or the co-hosts? I'll take either.
Well, I absolutely see this being a great launching pad. I do feel like it's going to evolve. You guys are going to definitely, change the theme overall. You guys are going to definitely start tackling other, topics. I think that just staying where you are with the current theme is going to expire eventually, and with that, but this is what you guys needed to create a propelling a launch pad here. So this is creating the momentum for the next. And I think you're going to definitely get into a whole different field after this.
That is very interesting. Well, I guess there are only so many paranormal things that we can talk about. Eventually, we're going to run out of monsters and scary things and aliens. So, speaking of Xander, he's been very vocal on the show about how he desperately wants a firsthand paranormal experience, and he's not picky about that either. And I keep telling him he's too needy, and that's why the supernatural world isn't coming to visit him. So, do you have any suggestions for people like Xander who want to open themselves up to that specific realm of possibilities?
Yeah, that's very profound that you said what you said, the neediness. Well, when people, I often see that same thing where people are like, I just want to see it. I just want to see it for myself. Really, what I feel is they're actually afraid to see it. They're afraid. It's curiosity, but really, in the end, I think that the overall seeing is believing in and of itself is an expiring narrative, a paradigm that is no longer, well, it's becoming obsolete, basically. It is now turning into believing is seeing. People are becoming more and more aware that thoughts create, and what we believe is the reality that we experience. And so, yeah, I'm sure that in the past, a lot of people unexpectedly experienced and encountered ghosts or whatever. Oh my God, sure. But just like UFOs, it's going to be like not a question of do they exist. It's just a matter of how can we now make that connection. Same thing with paranormal. And I think the best advice I can give to Xander is, what does his gut say? I mean, does he even believe that he has a gut? Which I do believe he does. And if your instinct or intuition says that there's something beyond myself, beyond the physical, then just run with that. How many things has he experienced in his life physically that manifested from his thoughts, their ideas, concept? That's also same thing, seeing something that was non-physical manifesting to physical. So you don't need to just pigeonhole into just, spiritual existence or beings or activities. If you think about the reality itself being a projection of our thoughts and our state of being, then you kind of begin to make the dots. I mean, even with just understanding that if there's a consciousness, something that is fueling our physical flesh and body to continue to function and serve a purpose, then we begin to understand everything from that being the center, not the physical world. That's really what it's going to kind of take the domino effect to go, well, start making the assumptions from that point on. Just if we're consciousness, then we are all having some kind of interactive connection as a collective consciousness. We are all somehow connected. We're always exchanging. When we start to understand that energetic nature of who we are, then again, the assumption that our consciousness that used to reside in the body that no longer resides still have an interaction with the physical world in one way or another. That's really a good start to kind of start from. But yes, I understand the curiosity. I would still love to have, definite physical encounters with spirits or aliens or whatever in physical form. Sure. But I've seen enough through my mind's eye, and I've interacted through my mind's eye, and I've known what I experience in the sixth sense or a quantum field, as you say. Knowing that, because I always say we exist in two worlds at the same time. The linear timeline where we wake up every morning, we drink our coffee and pay our bills and so forth, go to work. And then there's the quantum field, a field of imagination, a field of intuition, a field where it's the true laboratory of our reality that subsequently pours into our physical reality at a delayed reaction sort of state.
So believing is seeing, not the other.
I absolutely. I think we always operated on that concept, and we just never acknowledged it. That's all.
Right. As far as guided Soul-utions, SOUL,
Mm-hmm.
since we're doing predictions, that is the group that you work with. Can you tell us more about that?
Guided Soul-ution is definitely, the sort of the branch where that specializes definitely in guidance, counseling, and healing and so forth. But I definitely envision Guided Soul-ution as an organization, a team, a community of intuitives with the aligned intent to serve humanity, to serve for higher and greater purpose. So eventually, I'm going to be recruiting a whole team, to have a whole team from different backgrounds, astrology, Reiki, and quantum healing, remote viewing, and so forth. It just makes it more of a complete package to serve in the most effective way. And it also creates that team where you can validate certain things with one another. And so I envision Guided Soul-ution not only to be a spiritual counseling, but also a community platform where other intuitives can connect and to begin to have a sort of an accountability as well. Certain intuitives definitely don't, because we all operate on our own. There's no accountability. There's no one holding anyone accountable for using their intuitive gifts for their egotistical or egocentric agendas, and also using it for negative effects as well. So, this Guided Soul-ution wanted to be a benchmark for integrity of intuitive light workers who are here to serve humanity.
And that is beautiful. So how many are on your team currently?
I'm right now definitely going through a recruiting process. I'm definitely talking to a Reiki master. I'm talking to a remote viewer. I'm talking to another intuitive, mediums. There are mediums that are specialized in mediums. So that is definitely different than me doing, kind of mediumship as a part of a grand solution. So I still believe in, having experts, medical intuitives, energy healers, quantum healers. There are definitely a lot of candidates here. And there are a lot of people that are definitely already raised their hands and said, we want to be part of this team. I'm going through a whole revamp and rebranding of Guided Soul-ution. So with that rebrand launch, I will definitely announce certain teams that are on board.
Okay, great. And if somebody wants to schedule a session with you, what is the best way to do that?
Reach me at my website or email me at info@guidedsoul-ution.com. And again, the domain is guided soul and -ution.com. You can also call me at 424-571-2949. But I think if you go to the website, www.guidedsoul-ution.com, you're going to get all the information that you need to contact me.
Okay. And as far as your music, because I know you do music, is there a way people can, is it the same way to contact you for music if they?
Yeah, you can do that. Of course, you let me know you're interested. I have a website called Soul Identity, which is my band, soulidentitytrio.com. And you can see my musical activities and schedule. I am definitely moving toward releasing a new album with all of the originals that I haven't yet to release. So eventually I would like to definitely embark on tour and promotional activities regarding the original material. But I'm also just playing it almost every weekend somewhere with a band for dance and entertainment as well. So you can catch me in different forms in my musical journey.
Well, which leads me to stalking. If our listeners want to stalk you, either in person or online, I guess in person they'll see your schedule, but online, what social media platforms are you most active on?
I'm most active on Instagram and Facebook. So yeah, you can find me on Facebook or Instagram.
And your name isn't Smith, so it's probably pretty easy to find you, but I imagine your links are also on your websites as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Great. And then my last question is, what is one thing you wish I'd asked today but didn't?
I think that I wish maybe you would have asked me about, relationships. I think that that's a topic that I really, really feel passion to really help people with, because I think that a lot of people struggle with relationships. They're always looking for something in a relationship, and not only like intimate relationships, but family relationships, friend relationships, relating to others, and what that really means, the divine design under the guise of relationship. There's so much, bottom line is that we're not designed to just live alone. As long as we are designed to coexist with each other, and what that diversity and sometimes the difference can pose in terms of arguments and frictions. But what does that all mean, and where's that taking us? That's the kind of thing that I feel most compelled to help people with, and providing insights that I've accumulated over the years. I'm very passionate about that. So yeah, I wish we could talk more about that, but that's definitely a huge topic to address. Probably another episode.
Well, yeah, definitely. We'll have you back for that. Probably the reason I didn't ask is given my current single, all alone, living by myself lifestyle. It didn't hit my top 20.
Yeah, I understand.
But that is an interesting perspective, because of course what we're talking about with contrast. I mean, part of my own circumstance right now is sort of enjoying the quiet. But maybe that's not necessarily always the best thing for your own growth.
Absolutely. Well, because we're conditioned to believe being alone or single is incomplete, but by even saying that you're single, you got to understand. I mean, we lived with the propaganda that made us believe that if we weren't paired with somebody, we were incomplete or lacking. And that is the huge misconception. Relationship is not to complete something. It's to create synergy and expansion. You got to be complete within yourself first, so that you can effectively share that with someone else. That's the best way to look at relationships. You're not single, you're whole.
Well, good. Yes. So I'm whole all by myself. So we'll have you back for our Valentine's episode, and we can cover more about relationships. Right. We'll cover Cupid and Shiro. So, well, thank you so much for being on the show today. It's been such a pleasure as always, and I look forward to having you back in February.
And best of luck to both of you. Xander, I didn't get to see you or meet you, but I'm looking forward to connecting with you as well.
Next time. All right. Thank you, Shiro.
Absolutely. Bye.
Bye.
And a big thank you to Shiro and Stone for putting together that lovely interview for us. Don't forget to like and subscribe and follow our podcast. You can reach us at info@xspodcast.com, or look on our website www.xspodcast.com, or reach out to us on Instagram at Xanderstone Podcast and on Twitter at Xanderstone10. And if you would like to connect with Shiro, don't forget to check out the links in the show notes below.